as has been happening over the past couple live streams, the number of questions that we've received has been way in excess of the allowable time. So we don't do any sales pitches or anything like that. It's 100% Q&A, and we just kind of do a hard stop after 1 hour. And I guess it's a testimony to how hungry people are for accurate information that we're just receiving so many requests. So as a result, what I decided to do is go through some of the questions that we didn't have a chance to cover in the live stream and not give a definitive answer, but speak to the main issues that you should consider as you decide the best way forward and you engage your prepared tax advisors. Okay, so the second question that we have here is about the forced heirship rules for someone who is American living in Iberia, so either Spain or Portugal. So they were asking, can you talk about it? And there's a follow-up part to that question about whether it makes a difference whether the person takes Iberian citizenship or not. Iberian being either citizenship in Spain or Portugal. So first of all, I guess just like in the US, the area of tax practice where the highest amount of litigation, i.e. the highest amount of disputes, is arguably estate taxes. So I think it's a fair comment to say that in Iberia, so in Spain and Portugal, it is quite similar. So there will be quite a number of areas that are very, very nuanced, and therefore you would definitely need to get expert advice, especially for higher net worth, higher income earners, which would be typically the type of clients that would seek to engage and to approach us. So essentially, with Spain and Portugal, it's again, there's some detail there. It's really available online if you want to have a look, but there are rules as to succession. So if it is that you have assets and you pass away, particularly in cases where you pass away without a will, the laws of Spain and Portugal are very specific in terms of who gets what. And this whole idea of forced heirship, as it's commonly called, it's characteristic of civil law jurisdictions, so continental Europe, as opposed to common law jurisdictions such as the US and UK, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and former colonies. For Americans who are from Louisiana, because of the unique history of Louisiana, there may be some familiarity with some of these civil law concepts, as we'll get into further on in this discussion when we start to talk about different structures and different options. But generally speaking, you need to be very careful when, as part of your planning and as part of the move to Spain and Portugal, to understand how, assets are to be distributed in the unfortunate event of your demise. So in Spain, they set it out, so like 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And so 1/3 goes to, spouse and then some to the kids. And then there's discretion as to how the final third can be distributed. Now, you can have a will that would, to some extent, modify the laws. But again, if there are, for example, kids that are left out, they have a valid basis for contesting your will. So again, it gets very, very nuanced. And the takeaway that I want you guys to have is that you need to get advice. Don't guess this one. You really, really need to have advice. So what we can do is perhaps use this as a segue into multi-jurisdictional estate planning. By virtue of, I guess, being successful and having assets in multiple jurisdictions, it comes with a responsibility. So don't assume that because you have a will in the US, it's valid for anything in Spain or Portugal. Don't assume that because you have a will in Spain or Portugal, it's valid for the US. And even in the US, as you know, each state has its own different rules. So you need to have estate plans that are tailor-made for the states in which you have assets in the US. And similarly, you have an estate plan that's tailor-made for Spain or Spain and Portugal, or depending on where you are, because we've had inquiries dealing with both. And the person who asked this question didn't specify whether they were in are they considering Spain or Portugal? So I'm just speaking about Iberia in general. Now, so the most important thing is not to proceed without proper planning. You need to get a will, you need to have a proper plan in place. So I think that much is established. Now, the follow-up question is, would it make a difference? Because they were told by another advisor, this person is asking, whether it makes a difference if they were to take on citizenship, because after 10 years, you are in Spain, you are entitled to apply for citizenship in Spain, and in Portugal, I think it's after 5 years, you can apply for permanent residency, and afterwards you can apply for citizenship. So let's say 6 years. So the answer is, to answer to your question as to whether it makes a difference, is potentially yes, because the rules are designed with the nuances of domicile in mind. So to some extent, it's not just tax residency, but domicile, which is a more nuanced topic, which we get into in some of the spaces, but perhaps it's a bit of overkill for this particular quick response. So yes, it can make a difference, especially with Spain, where you would need to surrender your US passport. Generally speaking, you would need to surrender your US passport to take on, if you were to naturalize as a citizen in Spain. And then therefore you can't claim to be domiciled anywhere else. So so the answer is yes, potentially it would impact your estate planning strategy, your multi-jurisdictional estate planning strategy, if it is that you were to take citizenship in Iberia, in Spain in particular, where you have to surrender your US passport. And then from a US point of view too, the estate law relies, the estate tax, the transfer taxes, or the state tax, the transfer taxes law, which includes gift and estate taxes. Sorry. It's not entrenched, it's not codified. So what we do is we look at case law. There's a rich body of case law that's constantly evolving, and it speaks to the nuance of your domicile. Where's your place of habitual abode? Where they look at intent plus deliberate action to determine whether it is, even though you were living in Spain or Portugal, it was always your intent to return to the US, as opposed to those who really just cut ties and they said, I'm leaving the US, I'm never coming back, that's it, goodbye. So yes, it definitely does have an impact. Seek advice ideally from a team that understands both jurisdictions. Otherwise, you'd have to get advice that's specific to Spain, advice that's specific to Portugal, and advice that is specific to the states in the US in which you have assets or in which you are deemed to be domiciled. I hope this helps.
So if you're a 6, 7, or 8-figure investor, entrepreneur, or business owner who needs a tailor-made solution from a qualified team of professionals, we can help you achieve the international lifestyle, the freedom, and even the tax savings you're looking for. Visit us at htj.tax and live that international life.